Welcome back. Hi, we are here. I am Nick, your non-party affiliated host, and we are revolutionizing news in an open platform of discussion. Help us grow by smashing the thumbs up button now. Join the movement and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to participate, put your answers to the topic questions in the comments below. We have three guests today: a libertarian, a Republican, and a Democrat. Our first topic, we'll start with Angela from our third-party libertarian perspective. Topic number one, as you guys can read it, President Biden has paid his respects to the fallen police officer from the Capitol riots. A few weeks have passed and the dust is settling. Angela, what came out of the protests and why is it important?
Well, apparently, we're going to have a domestic response to terrorism that's come out of the protests. And, I guess you could say that that's important. I'd say that it's not a good thing, and we should be paying attention to what's come of it. Apparently, the New York Times ran an article that said counterinsurgency tactics like those used in Afghanistan and Iraq should be used domestically. And that is terrible. It was written by a former CIA director who used to run counterterrorism operations. His name is Robert Grenier. By the same token, he's a former director. He's not in charge now, but it certainly does give us a little bit of an insight into what the CIA thinks should be done to handle quote unquote domestic terrorism. And I wouldn't say that we had this sort of reaction to the Black Lives Matter protests. And I think that that's good because I don't think we should be treating people who are upset about elections and rioting and overall discontent as though they're terrorists. We should address these root causes. And I think it's really important that we try to do that.
Well, it sounds to me like people are really getting polarized. And when they get pulled so far from one party to the other, I mean, is this opening the window to the libertarians to come in and be that middleman, to be that voice of sanity, and for the population to start taking your party seriously?
Well, sure. I think that it's a great opening for us as far as people who are exhausted from political fighting. But I would say that we are not a middleman. We are completely separate, and we do not represent a shaking of hands between two political systems or parties that we think are an absolute failure. I like to spin us as we're a completely separate third option, not a compromise.
Pod, back to the question. A few weeks have passed. The dust is settling from the riots that came out of the Capitol. What came out of that protest, and why is it important to the main question?
Well, we're many weeks past, as you said, but the rhetoric hasn't stopped, and that's the sad part. You had AOC out there doing a live Instagram chat that her life was being threatened and she was scared, and it brought back. I mean, she says she was sexually assaulted years ago, and that's completely wrong. I mean, if it happened, it's wrong. That's what I'm saying. But now it's coming to light that she was in the Cannon building, which I've walked the hill many times visiting congressmen and women, and the Cannon building is blocks away. So now it's even the Today Show is taking down her tweets and everything, her tweets that they had because of these lies. And all that's doing is it's causing more separation in this country, because the media is covering her left and right, as an example. And I just guess it's frustrating because, they keep stressing in all the articles about, there was 5 deaths. It's very sad what happened to the Capitol officer being killed. And it's very sad about the one lady from California, the Air Force veteran, being shot by a Capitol policeman. But the other 3 died of natural causes. So that has nothing to do with this. Yet 19 people died during the Black Lives Matters protest, and you never heard Biden or Pelosi or anybody come out and talk about that. But now they're on the stage of what happened at the Capitol. So, I think as we move past this, I think it's really good what Angela said. I mean, we don't, to start controlling us, calling everything domestic terrorist, and basically we Republicans are the only ones being called domestic terrorist. And they don't even. And as what's frustrating now is they're finding out what really happened. Like the pipe bombs are planted days ahead. So that had nothing to do with Trump. Everything you read is this was Trump incited. And it's just, we'll never pull together, and it's going to keep us separated as long as that keeps happening.
Keith, back to the question. I'm going to let everybody respond, and I want our viewers to type their comments below on what their response is, especially to what our guests are saying. But Keith, the Capitol riots happen. It's a very serious topic. Congress looks to be taking it very seriously. The government is taking it very seriously, as well as other governments. But the dust is settling. What came out of the protests, and why is it important?
Well, I'm glad to see, first of all, that Congress is finally taking something seriously. But honestly, I don't think anything useful has come out of those protests. Everybody's learning the wrong lessons. They're solidifying their positions, which were way too solid to begin with. Yeah, the BLM protests, as different as they were in the sense that they were not trying to overturn a government, they did deserve a more strenuous response, I would say, in the media. So now when they come out and call these guys terrorists, for example, it rings very hollow. They kind of blew all their credibility. I was very disturbed over the summer at one thing that happened in Portland where the Trump administration was batting around the idea of classifying the protesters attacking the federal building as terrorists, which makes it an extrajudicial process to swipe them off the street, which they did, but I think it was mostly just to identify them and put them back. And so far, I haven't heard a single story of those people actually being disappeared or anything like that, which nobody ever circled back and mentioned. Yeah, these nightmare scenarios didn't actually happen, but it was disturbing. It was a very disturbing thought to classify them as terrorists. And I'm not in favor of doing that now with these other people. Unless you have a universal definition of terrorism you're willing to put forward, even if it captures some people on your side, I'm not interested. And I would like to remind everybody that the FBI had no problems sticking recording devices in Martin Luther King Jr.'s bedroom. So be careful what you set up. Just because you're the one swinging the hammer today, and I think I might actually be stealing Angela's position here. So it's a disturbing trend that I'm gonna quote another conservative, Douglas Murray. A lot of this stuff is actually designed to punish the people that you disagree with, and that seems to be a lot of what Trump's appeal was to punish the libs. And now, guess what? The hammer swung back the other way. Now it's the libs who want to punish the Trump people. And it's like, man, we are learning the wrong lessons. This is not going anywhere good. We need to cut this out. The media needs to stop focusing on AOC. She's loud. She's extreme. She does not represent the majority of Democrats. They need to stop focusing on Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think her name is, the QAnon lady. No, and it does suck that cop died in the protest. Like these cops. Sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. There's just so much to squeeze in here. The rhetoric, the anti-cop rhetoric that we all sat and watched happen in 2020, to come around now that one died in a right-wing riot and say, wow, this is tragic. Where were you before when they were being badmouthed and called, all cops are bastards and all this other stuff? They're not going to buy it. That's why a lot of the law enforcement turned pro-Trump. You have lost them over the course of years. You're not going to get them back. They're going to see right through this. This is very disingenuous. I'm very disturbed at how little we have learned from this entire debacle.
So, Pod, to kind of piggyback off of what Keith is saying, I mean, I'm watching this, and Angela's watching this. You two, who are on opposite sides of the political spectrum right now, seem to have a lot more in common in a very civilized, open discussion like this. It seems that you both have a lot of really great opportunity for discussion. That whole middle ground we always talk about, 85% of what we're talking about is typically the same. It's really the fringes is where we differ, but we're having a very similar conversation. Do you agree with a lot of the points that he brings up, or do you mainly just disagree with how the media is portraying the whole scenario?
I agree with Keith and Angela, and I think it's refreshing that what this shows is I think we're putting our political parties aside in this discussion, and it's we as humans we feel. None of us want the I don't think any party wants government control. There's the fringes that want it from all the parties. So it's refreshing, and as for the viewers out there, take from this that you can have a great discussion like this with people without, putting picking on them. You know what I'm saying? Just having a good. We need more of this, and that's what I love about this channel. Listening to Keith, he was spot on a lot of things there, and I think we both agree on that. But to say that Trump was stirring the rhetoric about the liberals. Somebody who wore a MAGA hat from the day Trump came down the escalator, I wore it all the time. I mean, I was on board from day one. And just the sneers you would get at stores, even in the last 4 years, if you wore a Trump jersey or whatever, there was a lot of rhetoric coming from the left just because of the person I supported. So, I think Republicans were just finally getting tired of being pushed against and laying low, being conservatives, and now they start to fight back, and it's been turned that we are the ones that are the bad side, and
Sure.
a lot of that comes from the media.
Angela, I want to get your take on your response to both of these gentlemen, right? We've got Republican and Democrat here. We're talking about what came out of the protests, what's important, what are we getting out of all of this as free Americans? How do you respond to them, and what's your final word on it?
I think that it's great that a lot of people are showing the wisdom to say that, hey, you know what? Acting this way is damaging to everyone. It doesn't matter what your political party is. We shouldn't dehumanize people. We shouldn't try to pass terrorism acts to punish people for protesting. And we should really wake up to what's going on in our country with politicians and why we're being pitted against each other. And I'm sure media has something to say about that as well. And libertarians were also targeted by John Brennan's comments, and so you should be careful what you support, because if it's just the far left or it's just the media or political institutions who are targeting people who aren't Democrats right now, eventually it could be targeting people who don't support every single position that they are saying you should support, and that would be a lot of Democrats, because like Keith said, not everybody in the Democratic Party feels represented by AOC and the Squad and French people. I think we all have a lot more in common with people that we know, our neighbors, people down the street, than we have with anybody at the Capitol building. And we should remember that.
Keith, I'm going to give you the final word and close us out.
I think we're being pitted against each other in a very, I don't know if it's coordinated or just instinctive, but there is, I think the GameStop debacle of last week really just pulled the curtain aside and let us see the man behind it. If you listen to the Trump people, the hardcores and the hardcore BLMs, they're not obviously identical, but they share a lot of the same vocabulary. The system is rigged, not the election. The system is rigged. We can't get ahead. We're barely making rent. We're being left behind. Blah 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 blah. There is something underlying this. There is this incredible inequality. Look at what's happened in the last year during this pandemic. The billionaires it's like a gold rush for them, and half the country now is wondering what's going to happen when the moratorium on rent cap comes due, and they can't pay. You got somebody $20,000 in debt they couldn't pay in the first place. Where are they going to come up with that money? So there's in my opinion, there's a huge financial leeching class just skimming money and resources, and meanwhile we're all bickering over gender pronouns and skin color and all these things. And if you look at who the corporations are backing, what they're saying, they're going to do whatever they can to keep the money flowing. If that means hey, we love Colin Kaepernick, they're going to say that. If it means, hey, we hate Colin Kaepernick, they're going to say that. they're just going to keep the juice running as long as they can, and they're going to sick us against each other. And we got to be a little bit smarter than this, because we do not have that much opposed. We can find a way. It's just there's a powerful interest keeping us apart.
We appreciate all of our guests coming on today, as well you, the viewer. Put your comments below. We want to hear what your side is on the discussion and your take, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye, guys.